So one of the things that is difficult for students is prioritizing and planning based on those priorities. So I had a young lady recently that is taking microbiology along with my class, sociology, and other classes. And she is so heavily focused on microbiology that her other classes, including mine, are sort of taking a back seat. And she was very forthcoming when we had our conversation. She said, I know that this is not the way it should be. I just don't know how to manage this. I just don't know how to balance it and give everything its, equal expectations and, equal attention. And so that's what we talked about during office hours. Now, I'm going to put a caveat in there and say, not every professor has the time or the bandwidth to do this. Yeah. Not every professor has the expertise to do this. Correct. This is my wheelhouse. So I open it up to my students to come to me and talk about these things.
I always did the same.
But she was just so overwhelmed. I mean, immediately when she sat down, she was crying because she was like, I didn't do well on my sociology test. And I was like, girl, stop apologizing for crying. You're clearly overwhelmed, and this is how you need to release that overwhelm. It's fine. You can cry in my office. I've cried in my office too. So, but let's think about how you've been doing things and what needs to change. So I think that is a big thing is prioritizing things, planning things out, learning how to do that. And then also studying, because that's a different skill.
A different issue. Like that's more of like a time management piece, what you just described. And I love that you had that conversation with her because it's so empowering for her. It's going to give her more confidence when she can be self-critical and honest enough with herself about what's been going on and in what ways she can change going forward. It's going to help her feel so much more confident when she knows she's taking agency over it. So I think it's so great that you did that. And the studying, I mean, what I see all the time is what students think is studying really isn't. So they're big on their highlighting and color coding and, they passively study. They review their notes. They review, their eyes sort of glaze over the book if they even bother opening the book. But they're not actively synthesizing things. They're not actively like putting things together, making themselves generate the information and make connections ahead of the test. So they feel totally discombobulated during the test, and then they blame test anxiety. When in reality, it's like so much of that could have been avoided with the right preparation. That's what I find. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. So a few techniques that I have seen that benefit students, because I would agree, there's a lot of passivity with studying, and studying is active.
Yes.
So I tell my students, you actually start studying when you're in class. That is a part of your studying. So I tell students a couple of things they can do after class if they don't have a class right away, or maybe just taking 5 minutes in between classes. They could do a brain dump. So putting away everything, pulling out a blank sheet of paper, and just writing down everything that they can remember. It doesn't have to be in an order. It doesn't have to be structured, but just getting those thoughts out. What did you remember? And then they can take their notes later and sort of compare, right? Look at what you took for your notes, look at what you immediately remembered, and see, what stuck quickly, what didn't, where the gaps might be. So that's one thing they can do.
Yep.
Another thing they can do is they can use their notes to write questions.
Yeah.
So if they have concepts that they were going over in class, maybe they can write questions like, what's the difference between this concept and this concept? Or, whatever it might be, right? What are the steps to the scientific method, right? I don't know. But just write questions that are related, that you're pulling directly from your notes. Other things are writing tests for yourself, writing out what a question could be, and if it's a multiple choice test, right, what possible answers could the professor ask? So you would know that if you're in class and the professor says, a lot of times students mix up this concept and this concept.
Yeah.
That immediately tells you, I need to make sure I know how to differentiate between the two.
Right.
That may be one of your sample test questions that
That's
you
right.
write. So there's so many ways to activate recall.
Yep.
That is much more active than passively rereading your notes or rereading the text or highlighting.
I couldn't agree more. I would add to that too. I think students need to make their own study guides. So I never provided study guides as a professor because without any offense to any professor who gives them out, I don't think it's helpful because part of the learning, in my view, is making your own. It's synthesizing all the different sources that you have and putting it together in a topical way that makes sense. So,
Mhm.
for example, many classes, and I know it varies depending on the class, but many classes have different sources. They may have lab reports, they may have articles and a book and class notes and in-class activities, right? So like a
Yeah.
bunch of different sources of information. And what I found most helpful is when students create their own study guide by theme. So every topic that's covered that will be on the test, and then going through each source and placing it topically where it belongs in that study guide, because it gives them, it makes sure they understand the significance of each. Like, why was this lab report assigned? What
Mhm.
did it teach us? What was the purpose of it? So I think it makes the process of synthesizing all of that information, I think helps them learn so well and on a deeper level. And I have just found it to be one of the best methods there
Mhm.
is. Um, so I don't know. I would add that just because I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, I too do not give a review. After the first two chapters, I do teach my students essentially how to make a review for our class.
Yep.
And so I walk them through that process, and then I say, okay, now that you know, you can do that for the third chapter that's in this unit, right? Add what we just did from that chapter, and then do this for each
Yep.
future unit.
Yes. I love that. I love that you do that. And I love that you teach them how too, because they've never been taught this stuff. That's what really strikes me. I don't know how we learned it, but they haven't. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's really important to teach them now, as much as we can, these active study techniques, because
Mhm.
high schools don't teach it and tutors don't teach it. And, tutors are very sort of subject matter specific.
Mhm.
And I think it's just transferable skills that apply to no matter what class you're taking.